making a video on the writings of the world, which I haven't really started making that video, has made me realize that I left out a huge chunk, which is the nations in Asia that were close to Egypt that did not invent writing, even though they lived close to Egypt and Sumeria. And so let's first look at these Egyptian symbols. And this is what they meant in the Middle Kingdom in ancient times. The one in yellow, the one with the colorful pictures, that's what they actually meant in ancient times. And if we look at the Proto Sinaitic script, Sinaitic being the area that is close to Israel, it's still part of Egypt, but the part that's close to Israel, then you will see that the Asian area that is part of Israel, that area lived a bunch of people who did not write, and they had to borrow writing from the ancient Egyptians, and from then on, the ancient Egyptians passed writing throughout everywhere. So, if we look at the symbols, we can tell that they do not represent a similarity between the two. Now, usually the way it's taught is by the same alphabet as us that we use today, and I'm going to do that as well. So you can see the vulture is A, B is the leg, C or S is that hook thing, D is the hand, and then they don't have E, but they have F, which is the snake. Then they have G, which is the window or curtain with windows. H is absent there. It's this symbol of intertwine. I is that leaf. J is another snake. K is a cup. And then we carry on. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is because if we compare it to Proto-Sinaitic, because the question is, did Proto-Sinaitic, the language that eventually led to Egypt, to English writing and Greek writing and all these other writings, was it exactly the same as the ancient Egyptian language? And the answer is no, not even a little bit. Though they were both Afro-Asiatic languages, they were not the same and they didn't transfer the same. For example, let's look at the letter A. So you can see there that there it's a bird, but there it's the letter Aleph, which Aleph is a cow of a sort. So how does the word ka, which is what the cow is called in this language, the Egyptian language, how does it go to Aleph? Well, let's look at the word ka for a second. Well, ka, and that's just the simple way of saying the word. It's got ayin in it, which means it's going to be a little different, but it's ka. This word ka, which is shown with this symbol when it's a noun, meaning things like Hathor and stuff like that, but then can also be shown with that other symbol when it represents verbs and adjectives and stuff like that, is those two hands. But how does it go from ka to Aleph? Well, easy. If we look at the Hebrew word for cow, it's also, or ox, it's also Aleph. So they just literally took the cow and will give it a literal meaning. You can see there that the second symbol is Beth, and it's that rectangle. Next to a rectangle, it switches and then it turns into a B. But if you look at the Egyptian one, the B is like a foot, which is very, very different. Then we go to Gimel, which you can see there, Gimel is like the finger sign, and the finger represents a, well, I guess C here, but you can see there that it's like a crook thing there, rather the S sign rather than that. Then Dalith, which is D, and right there it's a hand, there it's a fish. E or her is obviously a man with his hands raised out. Here we don't have the E, but it doesn't really matter. Then we go on and on and on and on. But I want to go back to the cow because this is the Sumerian version of the cow, and it can be pronounced in several different ways. But let's just look at the symbol. It also kind of looks like an A, doesn't it? if you really turn it around, you can see it being the A sign. The reason for this is because this symbol for a cow, which is not an A in Sumerian, also comes from a real cow. So they took the symbol cow and they turned it into letters. And this happened in Sumerian, in Chinese, in Gora Gora, in all of them. They first start off as natural symbols and then they turn into more symbolic, probably for ease, quickness, writing fast. Now, given that it took to about the Phoenicians until you start getting an A, clearly this is a coincidence. Now, speaking of coincidences, the whole Sumerian language in the beginning, because it has these natural similarities, begins as a very coincidence. Now, again, I said ease of use, even though it's probably easier to draw the first one. But if you look there, original pictograph. So you see there it's like a duck, and then the pictograph is changed position, and then early Babylonian, Assyrian, original or derived meaning, bird. You see the Assyrian, now it's like a cross with a thing. This is what happened with the Proto-Sinaitic script, where it turns into symbols. And you see there the next one is like a fish that turns into that. The next one a donkey that turns into that. Yeah, basically there the cow that turns into the A sound. Ox, you see there? Then you see the mouth that turns into that. Then you got the grain that turns into that. And then you got the orchard, the pillow, the boomerang, and the foot. Now, here's what I'm talking about when I say coincidences. The foot does look like the same foot in Egypt that represents B, but it doesn't represent B. Not in Proto-Sinaitic and not in the cuneiform writings. So what's going on? Well, what's going on is they're getting it from nature. So obviously feet exist in nature, and you can see that the foot there is much smaller in the cuneiform than the Egyptian one. This is the reality of the languages. Now, if we look at kanji in Japanese, you can see there that they have the same as the Chinese, this very complicated system where there's single words for certain things, and then there's attaching them to different things to create concepts and all this other stuff. So this one is basically a waste to learn. But then there's this symbolism, which I learned at one point in order to see how quickly I could learn it. And it actually shocked me because after 2 weeks I could remember every single symbol. And this is because of music. So to give you a tip, and I'm showing you this because obviously I'm drawing a link between simplism or simplifying something and having the complicated version. Now remember, the Proto-Sinaitic is the simplified and this is the complicated. That certain writing system in the Sumerian was the simplified, and then using every single animal was the complicated version. So I remember I went to YouTube and I was like, okay, I'm going to learn this. And I remember I first noticed that it was A-I-U-E-O. And I was like, oh, that's actually quite simple. And then I realized going down, it's Akasatanahamayararawa. So if you could learn that, you basically have got this down. Now, you're not going to know any words, but you've got the alphabets down. And obviously, the song that I learned was Akasatanaha Maya Nawa. Now, notice I said na instead of ra in this one. That's because there's a weird pronunciation for this R sound. You ever hear Japanese people struggling with R's? That's because in their language they have this weird symbol that's like it sounds like an N sometimes, but it's like a n sound. And you can see the iki, shi, chi, ni, hi, mi, di. Then uku, su, tsu, nu, hu, mu, yu, du. Eke, se, te, ne, he, me, re. Oko, soto, no, ho, mo, yo, do, won. So That's how you basically learn it, and you'll remember these symbols after a couple of weeks. I promise you, if you try. It doesn't take that long. Just paste it on your wall every single day. Practice it at least, I don't know, 20 times, and then leave, enjoy your day, come back, try it again. After a couple of weeks, you're going to be done. It doesn't even take hours. Now, I just wanted to show you this because of the people keep coming up with the same exact ways of solving the alphabet problem, which brings me to Rongo Rongo from Australia, which is why it looks as complicated as it does, because solving it is hard because we don't know what stage of development it's in. This is the symbols of Rongo Rongo, and quick question: are these alphabets? Are these words? Do they just symbolize exactly what they are? And also, what are they? So you can see the variety is numerous. You see a fish there, and this is why I wanted to criticize that thing where we talk about, oh, blah, blah, blah. But you can see almost all of them come from nature. You see a guy with his hand up. Let's start from the beginning. Guy with a hand up. Then you see fish. You see like some kind of animal. All these things that are being portrayed here, and we don't know exactly what it means. At least I know that at the very least they might have a calendar or something, or maybe even the numbers down. But after that, it's nothing. It's just a blur. In fact, this all of this could be just numbers written in word form. I would have no clue. But again, Korea invented the alphabet at some point independently, because that's kind of what happens when you take letters and you go on. And I want to remind you that in South Africa and in Africa in general, we had symbols that represented whole words or whole sentences or whole concepts. And at some point in some various places, they could represent one single letter in very rare cases, but most of the time they represent concepts and stuff. So it's impossible, literally, to assume what symbols mean. In fact, in Africa, people just saw the pretty patterns and had no idea that those patterns meant anything. So let's finish with it. Now remember, these arrows and everything and the colors, they all have a meaning. And again, it's unlike the other ones. It's not a letter. It's not even a small caption or whatever. It's not ba or ka or ma or anything like that. It's actually a whole concept, which is almost like a sentence letter. It's weird to put it that way, but it's actually like that. When I started studying this, which by the way, don't ask me what this means. I could give you the best guess I have, which, because there's a thing pointing up and down that represents a man and a woman. The ones on the side probably represent children, and I don't see pink, so there's no poverty, and all this other stuff. So this is probably like a thriving family of some kind. But don't ask me what it means because I have no idea. But because of the Zulu people and how they protected their letters and everything, we still actually have the translation. So someone can translate this. But with new developments happening, I think I should talk about it in a more dedicated video and try to put it all together using Adinkra and all these other scripts from around Africa, which have existed pre-colonially. So maybe I should make a video called Pre-Colonial African Scripts. We'll get back to that.